There's apparently no access today, but it looks like a very pretty design, particularly this, whatever they call it up on top. Having walked down the street from that last house and that very fascinating conversation, this is a picture of a drawing of what this ruin is that I've stumbled on. Presumably we're looking at it from the side, its long axis being from left to right. And here to our right, coming in from the right, the large paving stones, of course, for an old road. And we can see, even beyond that, more buildings. No surprise. It's interesting here, you can see the original close trapezoidal connection of these stones. How neatly they were put together. Only now are they collapsing as the ground subsides. We were looking at some of the massive stones that I think were top stones on top of columns that ran lengthwise. And this, interesting, this centerpiece looks like it would have been for a sewer line, even though it's in this building, because to either side are the larger pieces so beautifully fit together. There we can see what would have been the perimeter wall of this building, and on it would have stood column after column, as we saw, as well as other structures around it that are indicated by some of these pedestal-like things we see. Hard to imagine that these builders would have ever thought that their works would be lying in a heap, but perhaps waiting to be rebuilt. Here you can see these square holes. Probably there were square pegs that went into the bottom piece and the foundational piece, and then into the center of these columns that centered the column and held them in place. This is interesting because it looks like a totally separate plane as opposed to the part to the center here, which behind me all seem to be one level. You have to wonder what this stone was for. Notice it's rounded, or at least it appears to be. Whether it was fashioned that way intentionally, I don't know, but certainly that round hole in the center is interesting. Was this their original orientation, or did they just end up falling like that? As you can see, it's not the only building that was here, nor the only substantial wall or building. That's a substantial wall over there. And there, a hint of arch. Lots of those tops of pedestals there. And very elaborate ones. I forget what that elaborate style was known as. There were three kinds. So pretty backdrop by those flowers. It's interesting here, we can see the curve from right around to straight ahead of this little road. As I keep wandering around this town, lost again as usual, I keep running into more artifacts here of this Roman city. But I think there's some modern infrastructure in here, like that kind of rebar stuff. Possible that it was Roman, but I don't think so. Now what I think we're really looking at here is a modern building, modern in terms of the last century or two, built right into the ruins that was then demolished and removed as part of this grand excavation. And it's underneath and to the sides of that we can see, like that wall that's all over there, that's the original part of the wall. Not to mention the street right here, full boulevard, which probably ties directly into the boulevard we were just at a little while ago. And whether that grain urn was there or not, I don't know. There's an old well stone, if you will. It's interesting because it appears to be the triumph of archaeology over later construction. Notice what a large portion of this city is here. Now we're about, I would guess, a couple of hundred yards from that central area of excavation near the main square where the Odeon is. In fact, that's the museum that has the original here's where the domes are on the baths. Here we're in a valley about between two Provence-sized mountain ranges, and it looks like peaches and grapes and maybe fields of roses. We're about an hour outside of Veliko Tarnovo. Right off the bus stop, down the hill just about a block, is Hostel Mostel, a very pretty hostel in an old house, 100 and some odd years old. Very, very pretty building right near the hostel, right up the street from it. And there in the background, the castle that we'll go up to tomorrow. Spend at least the morning roaming around. This is one of the two decks of the Hostel Mostel in Veliko Tarnovo. And I am protected by a castle as I eat, and perhaps by a god, as long as he doesn't recognize me. On there. This was the earlier capital for Bulgaria. It promises to be interesting for its architecture. Just some random shots as I worked my way into the center of the tourist area of the town. Some pretty old carved doors. This would be much lovelier as a pedestrian street, but there's usually so much traffic on it that it can only be a local shopping street, I imagine. Many of the shops here are closed up. I mean empty, but not all.